During the early 1980s, the German Touring Car Championship, otherwise known as the DTM, was a great place to be winning races, especially if you were a German car manufacturer. They also allowed entrants from outside Germany to take part as well, so the whole series was highly competitive. No sooner had Mercedes shown their intentions to compete in Group A and the DTM than the rest of the German motor industry went into a bit of a panic, especially BMW, because they did not have a car ready. It was quite simple. If Mercedes were going to target the DTM, so would BMW, at least initially. Mercedes and the DTM, you see, they're ready. The E30 platform had proven itself to be well up to the job in the 3 Series street car. And so it was a natural donor platform for the new motorsport version of that car, the M3. When the freshly thought out 2.5-litre motor arrived in 1990, it went straight into the Sport Evolution, or Evo 2. That is precisely what we have here. Gave a very healthy 238 horsepower. But somehow, Paul Roscher had managed to extract from the racing version the grand sum of 380 horsepower. Everything's been thought out on the inside of this car too. I mean, just simple things to make the driver much more comfortable. Steering wheel and gear lever, handbrake, they all come to hand easily, which of course is just what you want, especially if you're going to try and race one of these machines. You know, the performance of these M3 Sport Evos was quite phenomenal, considering it would do something like 0 to 60 in just over 6 seconds. May not seem desperately quick today, but for 30-year-old technology back in 1987, it was quite groundbreaking. The M3 had become much more of a slippery beast, with modifications to the front splitter's adjustability, and the rear wing had taken on an iconic gurney flip to the trailing edge. The homologation papers also had changed on a yearly basis as competitive additions were added to the list. But the M3 was one of the first cars to have ABS on the homologation papers, as they insisted that there be a compromise between the road car and the racer. BMW did a run of 600 of these Sport Evo coupes, making this model scarce and accordingly much sought after. But as with all desirable cars, trying to find one in acceptable nick is not easy. Although the M3 used the same unit body as the 3 Series, it was clothed in an altogether new set of panels. Wheel arches flared all round to accommodate a wider track, and special features front and rear to improve the aerodynamics. This package was very professionally thought out, with BMW bringing all of their racing expertise to the program. You know, you don't win the Nürburgring 24-hour race 5 times, and the Spa 24-hour race 4 times. And I've done that race, and when the weather's bucketing down, it's really ghastly there. And the Wilhar 24-hour race 4 years in succession. Unless you've got a car that is almost perfect in every respect. When privateers or professional race teams like ProDrive and AC Schnitzer get hold of your racing car, they want to put their stamp of authority onto it as well. And I don't think either of those two had too much to do when they got their hands on one of these. BMW had already thought of just about everything that needed to be done. All they had to do was go out and race it and win. You've noticed that this is a left-hand drive car. Well, they were all built left-hand drive only. But there was a company in Great Britain called Birds, and they rather handily converted some 50 of these to right-hand drive, as obviously Brits would be more at hand driving on the left with a right-hand drive car. It must have been a blast when you had 380 horsepower in one of these. I've only got 238 in this, but it's a fun car. It's one of those remarkable machines that would be just at home today, travelling around the countryside as it was when it was new. You know, it's a funny thing, when I used to drive pre-war cars that had been fine-tuned to race by people like Fox and Nickel or the Alfa Romeo factory or Bugatti for that matter, you could always tell when you drove them that someone who knew what he was doing had sorted it, because everything worked so well. And that's kind of how I feel about this M3. It's had so much thought put into it. I think it's a tribute really to BMW's expertise that they can have produced so many of these cars, all of them totally fit for purpose. You know, BMW had to produce 5,000 of these to comply with the homologation rules, and they were a bit worried in case you couldn't sell them. Well, they sold the first 5,000, so they built another 5,000. Then they built another 5,000, and they capped off the production with a final 3,000. Well, I'm not surprised they sold so well. When you think this car won over 1,500 races, making it the most successful touring racing car ever. And the speed with which they got this car up and running to compete against Mercedes and Audi. You know, the S14 engine in this car was called the S14 because Paul Roscher only took 14 days to actually design it. The kind of modern miracle, but all in great German tradition. And boy, did they deliver.